All right, it's 4:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Heather Goodenough. I am on the Oklahoma Council for the Social Studies Board. I work in Broken Arrow. I am the instructional coach and social studies specialist there. Today we have the Oklahoma Council for History Education presenting today, History Hints and Habits for All. So with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Dalton, who is the president of OKCHE.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you to OCSS for the opportunity for us to get to present at your conference. We are excited to be here. Thank you to the participants who have joined us today and the participants that continue to join us. I wanted to let everyone know that we are the Oklahoma Council for History Education. There are a few board members on here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so that you can see our presentation for today. Can everybody see my screen? Can I have a thumbs up from people? Perfect. Okay, like I said before, my name's Dalton Savage. I'm the president of the Oklahoma Council for History Education. Our session is titled History Hints and Habits for All. We wanted our session to be geared towards all learners and all teachers. And so we have an expert from elementary, middle school, and high school that will be presenting for you today, along with our president-elect, Eric Harp, who will tell you more about our organization and our national conference. To start, like I said before, my name's Dalton Savage. I am the president of OKCHE. Eric Harp is with us. He is the OKCHE president-elect. And then Chelsee Wilson, she's with us. She will be presenting over high school strategies. And then she's on our board of directors. Kathryn Alsup, she is with us as well. She'll be presenting for middle school. And then Amy Allen will be joining us shortly. She will be presenting over elementary school. Our agenda for today, we're going to start with high school, hints and habits, and then we'll move on to middle school hints and habits, and then we will finish with elementary hints and habits. Again, if you guys have questions throughout the presentation, you can post your questions in the comments feature, and then we will have a brief pause at the end of each of our learning sessions so that we can be able to answer any questions that you may have. A little bit about our organization. We are the Oklahoma Council for History Education. Our purpose is to advocate and advance for the history of teaching in the state. We also provide for educational and professional interaction with teachers, specifically people who are interested in history. We also provide professional programs, so we do professional learning activities like these to help reach teachers in all 77 of our counties. And then the last bit of what our organization does is we support meaningful curriculum instruction, specifically for history education. We're a community, that's the great part about OKCHE, and we're a membership-driven organization. And so our membership is open to anyone with an interest in history education. We're gonna start with Chelsee. Chelsee is going to talk to us about high school hints and habits. She has experience teaching US history and AP World History at Westmore High School. She is the social studies curriculum specialist at the K-20 Center, and then her email is on the screen.
Thanks, Dalton. First, I was going to start off with some tech tools for today. These are all free tech tools to use. The first is Nat Geo, National Geographic Map Maker Interactive, which is a free web-based resource that students and teachers can use to create maps of the world. There are multiple layers that they can choose from in the style of map, plus added layers. They can look at cassava production, potato production, encroachment on populations of tigers. any kind of geography or human geography aspects that you can think of, you can probably find on Nat Geo. You can annotate and even save the map. So if you are having students work on a specific thing, they can save and export the file and submit it via your LMS, be it Canvas or Classroom. Next is Google Arts and Culture. I personally think it is a very neat thing to do in integrating arts into social studies and having students reflect on how history impacted the art that was created in certain time periods. And with Google Arts and Culture, they have a number of interactive experiences and museum tours. They can use their phone to do augmented and virtual reality tours with art. There's a close-up for Vincent van Gogh's bedroom, and they can look at his art through that lens, and it's a great free tool to integrate that art aspect into the social studies curriculum that you are teaching, whether it's American history, world history, geography, etc. Next is a simulation from Slate, and it is a transatlantic slave trade simulation in under 2 minutes. It is a really fantastic simulation. You can pause it and whenever you'd like and actually zoom in on one of the ships. So you can find out the information. What was the ship called? Where did it originate from? How many enslaved people were on board? And students can really research and get in depth into the transatlantic slave trade. And they actually pulled all of the data from the transatlantic slave trade database, which is also linked in the article. And lastly, the Her Story app, which is used with iOS devices. It's a personal favorite of mine in US history because it specifically highlights the role of women in history. You can use it in conjunction with a specific textbook, or you can download the app for free and research women that have impacted American history. And you can see there's Nellie Bly, I want to say 50 women are involved in the app for students to explore. Two instructional strategies that I really like in the social studies classroom. The first is Talk Moves from Edutopia. It is a great way to have students have those academic conversations, but it gives them sentence starters, because so many times in a classroom, students say, well, I had a lot to say, but I didn't know how to say it. Talk Moves gives students that verbiage to use, and it doesn't just work in a social studies classroom, it works in all contents, but it's really great in social studies, and if you do Socratic seminars, it's a really easy integration. The other instructional strategy that I'm a huge fan of is 6-word memoirs, and that comes from Miss Effie's blog. It's based on a New York Times article, and it's linked. Dalton's going to show that. But saying everything in 6 words. So summary is great. We want students to be able to summarize their learning, but 6-word memoirs makes them feel challenged in being very succinct in their summaries. I did this in the classroom with my students at the end of each unit for them to be able to summarize people or events in 6 words. To this day, I have students that still remember their John Rockefeller 6-word memoir, which is I'm as slick as my oil. I call that a win in my book. And lastly, 5 resources that you can use in the social studies classroom. Since I work at the K20 Center, I am a big fan of the Learn website, which is learn.k20center.ou.edu. It is a free repository with hundreds of 5E authentic lessons that are developed along with handouts and PowerPoints, anything you could need. Over 150 instructional strategies that you can use. 6-word memoirs is linked in here. professional development activities, and in the future we're actually going to have published professional developments over inquiry and discourse in social studies that you can use. The next resource is Breakout EDU's Digital Sandbox. Kind of a buzzword right now is their digital breakouts. Everyone wants to do digital breakouts, and they are really a fantastic tool. It's hard to know what you want in a digital breakout and create your own if you've never participated in one. So I always recommend this digital sandbox. It has a whole bunch of free pre-made digital breakouts for you to use with your students and to make your content a little bit more interactive. The next resource is the Stanford History Education Group, or SHEG, as a lot of people call it. If you look at the Reading Like a Historian history lessons, those are really great resources because it bases the lessons in historical inquiry, and they are really rich with primary and secondary texts and resources to use and to build into your classroom for that critical thinking and reading and literacy skills that so many students need. The Smithsonian Learning Lab is another resource that I highly recommend. It is available for all content areas, and similar to SHEG, you can find images, you can find primary and secondary sources, lessons, all sorts of activities that are pre-made and that are easy to integrate into your classroom, whether you're face-to-face, blended, or virtual. And then lastly, I highly recommend connecting with OKCHE and following them on social media as they work to find really great history resources that are available across the state.
Thank you, Katie. Does anybody have any questions for Katie? I see Eric. Do we have anybody in the chat that has a question?
No, we do not currently. I just put on there that I've used SHEG in whenever I taught middle school, I've used that before and in high school. So SHEG would be a good kind of like one-stop shop for like pre-AP history teachers, maybe like pre-AP 8th grade or pre-AP Oklahoma history. That's kind of a good way to starting kind of like those DBQ strategies and things like that. I'm an AP World teacher, so that's kind of a good thing to work on. So I think that is it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chelsea.
We're going to go ahead now and move on to our middle school hints and habits. This session is done by Kathryn Alsup. She teaches at Oklahoma City Public Schools at Belle Isle Enterprise School. Her background, she has experience with 7th grade Eastern Hemisphere geography, as well as 6th grade Western Hemisphere geography. Her big emphasis is on project-based and research in her class. So this year for her, it was all about adapting that to fit into this virtual world that we're living in. And her email is there as well if you need to reach out to her for any questions you may have for her presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dalton. So like Dalton said, this section is going to be about how I've adapted my classroom to fit in a virtual world. And so one of the big things that I do is guided research, since middle school students are still young and learning what it's like to research in a history classroom. I do a lot of guided research, and one way that I do this is using something called web quests. And actually, if you want to click on that, I can show you an example. This is not my example. This is an example from a teacher in Indiana, I believe. But this is one that I have used in a pinch at the beginning of the year, just to get kids back in the groove of thinking about geography. And so the web quest, as you can see, is links to different websites, different reputable websites with questions that follow. And for these, they click on that website, and then they can answer the questions using the information found on in those links. They are, I think that's going to work. They have enjoyed using web quests to the point where they want to do it, where the point that they like to do them a lot, and so they've requested them. I keep it to about 1 a unit because I don't want, I want to interact with them as much as they want to do web quests. But I have adapted it to fit, I've adapted it to have them create their own as like a review lesson. So I'll do this as like an introductory lesson where it's like, what is geography? Let's talk about some basic geography things. What are the 7 continents? What are the 5 oceans? That kind of thing, so that we can get back in the groove of it, and then we continue on with the lesson. One thing that I had them do recently is we were talking about world religions, and they did, they had to create a web quest for their review before their test about what world religion, about the basics of world religions. So like, what is, you know, the holy book of the Jews? What is the holy book in Hindu? And so they did all of that on their own. And so that was pretty interesting to see the websites that they came up with and how, and then dissect the information they wanted other students to understand as being important to the world religions. A couple of tools that I have used to again help with that research. There is a website called Symbaloo that's not linked on here, but there is a website called Symbaloo, and it actually creates like a grid of different websites that you can implant yourself into that grid, or you can search Symbaloo, and they already have some pre-made research blocks available depending on the content. So at one point when I was doing Western Hemisphere geography, we talk about history, and so we did a 1920s day where there was a Symbaloo that was available on the 1920s, and like in one area you could click on I think 5 to 6 different websites and learn about the different characteristics and events and people for speakeasies and gangsters and flappers. And then in another area there was one area where it talked about the technological advances of the 1920s. And so it's a way that you can put in websites that you know are appropriate and sound and as unbiased as possible. The only issue, and if this is an issue, this is the issue, is that it's not a free website. There is a 3-month free trial for educators, but I think after that it's just under $50 a year for educators to be able to use that. However, I do believe that some of their database is free to educators. And then the second tool that I've used this year is called Flipgrid, and it is a website where students can create videos in length from 30 seconds to 10 minutes long to just share what they've learned. You can give them a discussion question, and then it creates a grid for your class. You can set it where it's on private, where only you can see the videos, or you can set it where it's on public, where their classmates can see the videos and they can respond to their to the original video. And they like it because, especially in middle school, they don't like to hear the sound of their voice or their face on video too much, but they can put like stickers, like sunglasses stickers over their eyes, or they can tile it where they make their background disappear. And so it's just an engaging way and a fun way to get them to interact with each other without being in the same room. And then if you want to go to the next one. I wanted to share with you 2 lessons or 2 tangible ideas to take into your classroom. One of the things that I have done in geography since my first year is comparing and contrasting government and economic systems. And I do this by region. So it's a project that I'll have the students do. I usually choose 3 to 4 different countries within the region that we've been talking about. And I have them create a business, and then they have to create a business proposal for a board, an imaginary board that's going to provide them funding to go into the country that they have deemed the most worthwhile for their business. They do this by comparing and contrasting the government systems in each of these 3 or 4 countries and the economic systems, and then they rank them in order, and they have to give me a rationale about why they have ranked these countries in the way that they have. And so there you get that evaluating in there, and then they get to create a business proposal. They really like it because they get a little creative time when they come up with the business proposal that would be the most likely to grow and expand in that country. So they get creativity as well as it's some really tough, hard learning, but they don't realize that it's tough because they're doing it in a way that's fun and exciting for them. And then the last thing I wanted to share is this iCivics website. That one is linked. And this is, my 8th grade teacher uses this, and my 5th grade teachers have started using this at my school. It is a gaming website based on civics. So if you go to play, you can find all of these games all about that lead you from U.S. history and civics, from immigration all the way up to like winning the White House or constitutional rights. And fun, like race to ratify. So you like the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, like if there's like team games where you can get some of your kids on the Federalist team, and then some of them are going to be on the Anti-Federalist team, and then they compete in this game to see who wins ratification or not ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Dalton, if you'll go back up to the Learn thing, the Learn tab at the top. Teach. One of the cool things about this is that they have resources. They have free lesson plans to go along with the games. So if you want to teach, your unit is over the Constitution, they have games over the Constitution, and then they have lessons that go along with it to teach more in depth about what the Constitution is, the preambles, principles in the Constitution, who the Federalists were, what they were about, who the Anti-Federalists were, the Bill of Rights. And so you can click on these and they give you this lesson, as well as, so it's got all your good stuff in there, like your learning objectives. And then I think there's even an opener. And then you can connect it to your state standards. The great thing about this website is that it is free and that it spans ages. So it actually goes down into elementary school. I think Immigration Nation can be played by 3rd graders all the way up to 12th grade, just depending. And the games vary in difficulty based on the grade level that is associated with them. So there's one that's called Win the White House, and it's all about becoming president of the United States. And you have to understand the Electoral College, and you have to understand campaigning and budgets. And so it's actually very difficult to do. So that's more for those 12th graders, but the 8th graders like to play along as much as they can. So that is a good resource for our civics teachers.
Thank you, Katie. Does anybody have any questions, Eric? One of the things I want to mention though, with those web quests, I really do like that idea about having the students create their own. I think that empowers them, and it just, if the other kids can play some of those, it just helps to better have the students better understand those concepts. So if they're teaching others, I think that that's really important. So thank you.
Yeah, so really the only thing, both Chelsee and I kind of made a little bit of like comments throughout. I put on just one of the thoughts that I've had about Symbaloo would be maybe like would be good for a research project or paper. So like to me, if I was going to be focusing on like Industrial Revolution or something, where, you know, if they're going to do like a project putting together for like a week or whatnot, that could be kind of good for like that 3-month trial. And then Chelsee, you said that it was a great resource for visual learners. Did you want to say a few words about that?
it's just an easier cognitive lift for students that are visual learners or kinesthetic learners, or even students that have some maybe dyslexia or any kind of processing disorders. Symbol is a great tool.
Awesome. I think that's it. Oh, one thing I did have a question, Katie. I saw on iCivics that it links up to Kami. Have you had any experience using that at all?
No, we don't use Kami as a district, so no.
You know, you're good. I know on Chromebooks, a lot of times the students, like if they're typing like a worksheet, it can link up to Kami. And so I didn't know if that was like.
Yeah, so that's what it does. There's like, you can preview the PDFs that it would, or the worksheets that it would send to the students beforehand in those lessons.
Yeah, so that's a good thing, especially with us, like all virtual and things where they could do it at home on their Chromebooks or whatnot too. So it's a good deal.
Okay, and then our next presenter is going to be Amy Allen. She's presenting over elementary school hints and habits. Amy is with the instructional leadership and academic curriculum with an emphasis in social studies, education technology. She's an elementary school teacher, curriculum developer, and there is her contact information. Amy, I'm going to go ahead and let you start.
Okay, great. Thank you. So like Dalton said, I am an elementary school teacher. I've taught 2nd and 3rd grade for several years. And so I know sometimes the application of social studies and history in particular looks really different in elementary school. And so I think my hints and habits also look a little bit different. But hopefully, no matter what grade you teach, you can take something away from this. So I started out with a hint that I really wanted to share and empower anybody who's an elementary school teacher on here. Don't be afraid to abandon the textbook. I think, you know, in Oklahoma especially, we have state standards that we are required to teach, but we aren't required to teach them using the textbook. And so there are ways that we can, at the elementary school level, be more engaging and connect with our students more than just reading a story from a textbook. And one of those ways that I want to emphasize is by using picture books. There are a lot of really good quality social studies history picture books available to use in your elementary classroom. Every year, the National Council of Social Studies publishes a notable trade book list. And so those are the best picture books that have been published in the last year. And they have a catalog that comes out. You can download it for free online. And you can use that list to find picture books on almost any topic in social studies at this point. And I have a couple examples to share for you today. In almost every grade level in the Oklahoma standards, it talks about teaching famous Americans or famous local heroes. And so I have a couple books that I think are especially timely, with yesterday being Martin Luther King's birthday. This one is called A Place to Land, and it's about Martin Luther King's speech at the March on Washington. And then I have this one, which is more local history, and it is about Clara Luper and the Oklahoma City sit-ins. And really cool thing about this book is that Clara Luper is a social studies standard that is listed, like her name is listed next to famous Oklahomans in the Oklahoma standards. And so she's not going to be in your textbook, right? So how do you teach about a famous Oklahoman? This is a really, really great picture book. My second thing that I have listed there is primary sources. And in a lot of cases, and I'm going to show you a resource for this in just a minute, but in a lot of cases, even in elementary school, we can pair together picture books and primary sources to provide a really rich and full experience for young students. So for example, in this book, this is about the sit-ins that happened in Oklahoma City in 1958. Most of us know about the Greensboro sit-ins in 1960, right? But less people, I think, know that Oklahoma City actually did that idea first, and Greensboro got the idea from us. And one of the participants in this sit-in was Marilyn Looper, who's Clara's daughter, and she was just 8 or 9 years old at the time, and she's still alive. And so in the Library of Congress, there's a primary source that is an interview where Marilyn is talking specifically about her experience participating in the Oklahoma City sit-ins. And so when you have an elementary school student who is 8 or 9 years old, or 7 or 10, sometimes we don't think that history applies to us, but really here was a student making history. And we have a resource where she talks about that, that experience, which I think is really powerful and is going to be more engaging than just reading the same or a similar story from a textbook. And so that's my first hint, is to maybe take a chance and look for something else that you can use. Do you want to go to the next slide? Along that same idea, well, let's see. So a habit that I want to share with you is that even in elementary school, where we don't have necessarily a significant block of time that's related to social studies, right? We have math time, a significant amount that we're required to teach. We have reading instruction time that we're required. We can make teaching social studies a daily habit, and I have a couple of different suggestions on how we can incorporate the study of history into our everyday lessons. And so the first thing that I wanted to share is the idea of having an overarching theme. So when I was an elementary school teacher, I currently do more curriculum development. I'm not teaching full-time, but when I was teaching full-time, I always had a theme of what I wanted my class to learn. And so, for example, when I taught 3rd grade, one of my themes for the year was, can someone be both good and bad? And that's a history concept, right? Because we learn about people in history who are heroes and who are villains. And sometimes that line is not fully clear, but the way that our textbooks present topics is normally very black and white, and they don't give children a chance to problematize or question whether or not this person that they're investigating is good or bad. They are just good or bad. They can't be both. And so I have found that 2nd graders actually really do a good job of grappling with this. And I think when we start presenting it to them in 3rd grade instead of in 7th grade, then in 7th grade, they're more ready for those conversations because they've been taught that they can have them. And I love that Chelsee shared that Talk Tools website, because that's something I also use in elementary school, right? Like, I'm trying to teach them to have discussions so that when they get to middle and high school, they're ready for you and they can actually contribute to those discussions and don't necessarily have to learn those skills, from scratch. So the reason I put this under incorporate into daily instruction and overarching theme is because that's a history or social studies theme that we can incorporate into lots of subjects, because we can talk about that in science, and we can talk about that when we read a literature story, and we can talk about that when somebody's being a bully. Like, it can go into so many different ways, but really that's part of good social studies instruction, is thinking about what questions do my students need to be able to answer to leave my classroom better citizens than they came to it, and then think about ways that we can incorporate that into different subject areas. And so that leads perfectly into the next one, integrate with other subjects. While your school may not have a minimum required time, or they might even have a maximum amount of time that you're allowed to devote to social studies instruction, it's really easy. Well, maybe it's not easy. It's really possible to integrate history lessons into other subjects, especially literature, because again, like we just talked about, all of the great picture books that are available, we can teach literacy standards at the same time that we're teaching our Oklahoma social studies standards. And I think it's important to realize that and to think about ways that we can intentionally take time to do that. And if all else fails, you have snack time and you have break time. And so I always hated to feel like there was a minute that I was wasting. And so sometimes during snack, we would have some of those social studies conversations. Or if we had a break or really wiggly students, we would jump up and do some social studies games. So for example, I just want to share with you one that I did, which is Geography Simon Says. So whenever you have really squirrely kids who just need to move around for a minute, a good break is to play Simon Says, but using geography terms. And so when we start out with North Pole, put your hands on your head, that's the North Pole. Equator, put your hands on your hips, That's the equator because it's right in the middle. South Pole, touch your toes. That's right. And that's at the bottom. As you get those mastered, then you can add in like Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, right? Knees and shoulders. You can add in north, south, east, and west by just rotating your body to point in that direction. And so some of those social studies concepts that don't really get ingrained, play this game once a week, and that will help them to be prepared. Again, like introduction to vocabulary, understanding some of these topics that you don't have a lot of time to spend on, but everybody likes to play a game for a minute. So that's a fun way. And there's lots more of those kind of games that you could look up and incorporate into those 5-minute breaks. Hands-on, move around a little bit. Okay, do you want to go to the next page? Okay, and then on this slide, I actually just have some resources that I want to share with you because I think the things that I'm mentioning now are really important, right? Integrating into other subjects, doing those, thinking about teaching with picture books, those are really important and good things to do, but they're also hard and they take time. And anybody who is teaching full-time, you don't have a lot of extra time. And so I wanted to share some resources. These are not for students as much as they are for teachers, where you can find really great quality social studies lessons that you can easily implement tomorrow. And so Dalton, if you want to click on that first one, this website, C3 Teachers, it really does a good job of providing lessons that are focused on one of those big questions that I was talking about. And so if you click on inquiries at the top here, then it takes you to a search hub and you can choose the grade that you're working on. And Dalton, maybe if you just pick 3rd grade, you can narrow it down by lesson or by topic, but we're not going to do that right now. We'll just look at what comes up here. And so here's a bunch of lessons that are inquiry lessons that focus on a big question that could even be a theme for your classroom or maybe just a theme for a day. But for example, this lesson about children's rights says, do people around the world care about children's rights? And so that's a ready-to-go made lesson that that teaches inquiry skills, that focuses on a big question that you could take into your classroom and teach tomorrow. And so I think this website, I love sharing this website because it's a really great resource for teachers who want to do more social studies or want to do more less textbook and more other kind of lessons, but they're not sure where to start. This provides some really good examples that are even appropriate for the grade level that you teach because you can search by grade level. The second website that I have on there is actually, this is a link to a blog. And if you go to this blog, which is Knowledge Quest, it's the American Association of School Librarians. There is this person, Tom Bober. It was the Library of Congress teacher in residence for a while. And so he has done a lot of work about pairing picture books with primary sources. And so, for example, this book that I shared with you, A Place to Land, you can see that second link right there is actually a ready-to-go lesson plan that pairs primary sources with this book. So if you wanted to do something this week, teaching about Martin Luther King Jr., you could use this book and you could use some of these primary source resources that are already available that link perfectly with this book. So, connecting real life primary sources with a picture book that connects to something that's happening in their life right now. It's a celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. And there are there's 5 or 6 pages worth of these picture book and primary source pairings that he's already curated for you. And so I feel like this is a really great resource, especially if you want to use more picture books in your classroom. There's also some science things on here. It's not all history related, but there's stuff with patents. It's a really fascinating website. If you have time, no matter what your grade level is, I would encourage you to look at this website. I actually have been working with some high school students this week, and just yesterday I made them read this book, and also we talked about some of those primary sources. So it works great for all ages. And then my last source that you can click on this if you want, but this is another website, teachingtolerance.org, and it just, again, provides some great lesson plans. There's a spot on here, I think it's under classroom resources, and there are some classroom resources, lesson plans that will help you. I'm so sorry, I have to cough again. There are some lesson plans that will help you be ready to talk about hard topics in history and in social studies with your students. And that's an important part of social studies and history education. And this helps prepare you for doing that. Okay, so that is all that I think I had. I think that was my last slide, but if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or my email was on that first slide, so amy.e.allen-1@ou.edu. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to chat with you more via email as well.
Amy, I was thinking when you were talking about whenever I was an intern in Eric's class, and you mentioned that game, the Geography Simon Says, and that would have been perfect for even our middle school kids there. I think that would be something that they're having a lot of fun, you know, and they're really involved, but they are learning at the same time. I thought that was a really neat idea, and that's something that geography teachers could implement tomorrow.
Yeah, and
one of the other things,
middle schoolers miss recess, so I think that's a great idea, right? Because they don't have recess anymore. They still want to be able to move around a little bit.
did anyone else, Eric, were there any questions in the chat, or did anybody else have any questions?
No, so we basically, Chelsea and Katie and I, we've just been kind of just talking back and forth. One of the things on the chat that I just kind of put more as like, you know, like notes throughout. That's one thing that's kind of hard with this virtual, is that normally we could kind of have like, you know, discussion with us like in the same room. And so we've kind of turned the chat into that. One of the books that I like using, that was a, in our OU Foundations course, that was one of the things really big, was using children's books. So even though I've taught 6th through really 12th grade, but I teach AP World History currently, my students like the picture books because you can talk about something that's very either kind of controversial and like Chelsea had put like different, you know, different perspectives. And so things that, you know, kids are going to remember more and really identify with through a children's book, because it's kind of like that children's lens a little bit. And it's kind of fun to kind of put like an elementary teacher hat on for a bit whenever in high school. And they kind of like going back a little bit to that, that age group. Chelsea, was there anything you wanted to jump in on that?
No, I was just seconding your recommendation for Encounter. Phenomenal text.
Encounter is a really great example of what we're talking about here, right? And even if, I mean, in some districts, I know you are required to use a textbook, you can read that section out of a textbook and then read Encounter and and then use the talk tools that Chelsea referenced to have a really great discussion about how those are the same and different, and how do we know what's true in history and what is not. So.
And Amy, I appreciate you giving us permission to abandon the textbook and to look for other ways to help our students understand topics, especially using the primary sources, even when they're in elementary school. I think that that's great, setting them up to better understand moments in history, and then also for as they move up into middle school and then into high school.
It just breaks my heart when kids are like, say history is their least favorite subject, because I'm like, why? It's the best one. So why? We can teach it in so many great engaging ways. And so, yeah, thank you.
Well, and I think too, one of the problems, my aunt teaches in a small rural district in southern Oklahoma, and she is a 4th grade elementary teacher. And, you know, there's such an emphasis on math and English, and she really wants to teach history, but you know, they're focusing on, hey, we've got to have these students understand mathematics and English. And so providing some of those strategies, some of those hints and habits that you did, I'm going to be sure and share those with her. But just like you said, even at just snack time, you know, taking advantage of every moment that we have with kids to be able to help them better understand why history is important. And then maybe I always tell my kids that, you know, I hope that, and I know that at some point in our class, there will be something that you can connect with that has impacted you or impacts your family. And so if they can see themselves through history or involved in history, then that's going to have a great impact on them.
Yeah, this is all really good stuff. I'll say this one more thing, then Dalton will move on with the presentation. But even one thing too, I know like we're gonna have this recorded and posted on, I know OCSS is gonna have this posted on their social media and website, and then we'll do the same as well. But one thing too is like with horizontal, integration, work with your English teacher and see like with me, every year I know with sophomores, they teach about Animal Farm. And so what's one of the things I need to know for their AP test? Communism. And so it's where work with your English teacher and have them do even some like the literary stuff and like with the book, and then work with the content as well. And so I know that might even be something maybe like with elementary teachers, I'm not sure, of even like working together and kind of like, work as a group, work as a team to be able to get some of all those skills taken care of. Find a buddy. All right, Dalton. So I think we are up for my part of the presentation. And one of the things that we kind of want to do just with this presentation was hopefully everyone got something out of it. I know that, with elementary, I'm getting things and ideas of, with high school and like with games, with the map. I teach AP Human Geography as well. That's even some things to do, even like with seniors could be fun, or Katie talking about 7th grade. And so one of the things about the Oklahoma Council for History Education is, we are there for you all as history teachers in Oklahoma. And so I work in Edmond, and so we have a really good collaborative environment here in our district. But, some people, I know I have friends that teach up in Northwest Oklahoma, and they are the history teacher. And so we really want to, a lot of times, we want to be available to you as being that collaborative partner. And so we have our own Facebook page. We have our own Twitter handle. Dalton, I think you've even created an Instagram, which I'm not on Instagram, so I don't know anything about that. You don't have to keep up with so many different things. And then we also have our website. And before we get to the website, Dalton, on Facebook and Twitter, some of the things that we will post on there is, if we see a resource about a great like lesson idea or other professional developments that are available throughout the year. Like one of the things was with the Capitol insurrection that happened, I guess, was that a week ago, 2 weeks ago? It was very much like, boom, this big event has happened, and then I see kids the next day. So what am I going to do? It's like we shared the National Memorial had a lesson plan already basically made. And I know I use that in my classroom of just kind of like talking points of what, just kind of all those different conversations. And so we are there for you as a professional, as a history teacher in Oklahoma. And so that's kind of basically that. Twitter, the same thing. Sometimes I've noticed Dalton kind of keeps up with the Facebook page and I keep it with the Twitter page. And sometimes, certain organizations really use Facebook and some organizations really use Twitter. And so we try to kind of talk with each other and making sure that you all have access to both. And then Dalton, if you'll click on the website, we can kind of show a little bit about that. So one of the things, we also send out a monthly newsletter. And one of the things that we will do there is on that top right-hand corner, if you will click join, joining OKCHE. So it's actually free to join. And so it's pretty simple of just, I think you're copying and putting that into the chat. Is that what you're doing, Dalton? Yes, you are. So there's a little bit of a delay. And so if you'll just fill that out, if you're not already a member, or if you want to share this with somebody in your building to join, we will send out a monthly newsletter for other resources that you maybe missed, like on Facebook or Twitter. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop. And so then that way we can communicate with you and share things with you. We actually just got, and we're really excited about it. It shows on there about our logo design. So we kind of went through a new like rebranding for the organization. And so the website is still a little bit in progress. And so we are also wanting to kind of be a one-stop shop. And so if you're looking for a particular lesson plan idea or a presentation, it will be there. And so like maybe it's like, see on there, Dalton already has the presentation from, so that's actually from our last year's presentation from OCSS, and we will put that on there as well. We'll have teachers sometimes contact us about, I was at your OCSS presentation, or I saw this, I'm on this lesson, where is those links? And so that is there for you to be able to use. And so that's one of the reasons why with our presentation, we have a lot of those links built in. So then that way you can get to those and be kind of a one-stop shop on that. I'm trying to think anything else about that. Go back to the presentation, Dalton, and I will talk about, so one of the things about, obviously this is with, we are at the Oklahoma Council for Social Studies conference, and how they are affiliated with the National Council for Social Studies. We are the Oklahoma Council for History Education, and we are partnered with the National Council for History Education. And so they actually have their national conference coming up soon in April, which that kind of seems far away, but it's actually coming close. And that's actually going to be happening on April 8th through the 11th. And so this is kind of, COVID has its own challenges, but one of the good things about COVID is you can be able to attend a very, what's the word I'm trying to think of, high-end national conference. And a lot of times those are so expensive because you're having to register for the conference, maybe ask your principal for a sub, hotel and food and your airplane ticket. And so this conference is good because you can, maybe, during like a lesson plan time, you can watch it. And it's kind of a come and go, or if you're at home or whatnot, or if you're working virtually, maybe you can kind of like toggle while you're doing Zoom and all that. And so if you go to, here's their website. So it's ncheteach.org/registration. If you click on that link or just kind of copy and paste it to your URL, it has the prices on there. So like NCHE members is $100, full-time students. So if you know, like if you have like maybe like a student teacher or an observer, they have actually a discounted rate. That could be good for them to go as a pre-service teacher or someone that's about to get to the profession of getting some ideas. But I think that'd be just a really good kind of like reflect and get some ideas going into next year's of hopefully we're going to be in the post-COVID world and we'll be back in our classrooms normal and getting to talk to, like I'm just looking at the keynote speakers. We have someone from two people from Harvard, University of Maine, California, another from Harvard. And so, just being in Oklahoma, getting to hear these people live and at home, this is kind of a good opportunity to take a good an advantage over a hard and difficult time in our lives. So, oh, Jenny Brown, I love the paper slides presentation. Oh, great, that's awesome. So, hello again, that was me last year. And so hopefully, you enjoy that. What's funny is I use that paper slides and I did it a different way with my AP Human Geography kids last year reviewing for their semester test. So that was a good thing as well. So hopefully you all got something out of that. So Dalton, do you want to wrap up? Any last minute questions?
Yeah, sure. Again, if you guys have any last questions, put them in the chat and then Eric will notify me and then we can talk about it. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. Thank you to the presenters. Our hope out of today is that you found something that you can use in your classroom or you can share with a colleague or a friend or somebody who's a history advocate. I think it's really important as we close to make sure that we as a group continue to advocate for history education, not only in our state, but in our nation. And through our organization, you can help do that. Our membership is free. You just need to go to okche.org and then join us. We're looking this year into really doing some really incredible activities with our members. And so I want you to be a part of that. As the president of OKCHE, our organization is a place where all members of society are valued and respected. And so we want to make sure that you have a safe space and a place where you can collaborate with people who are in the history community. Maybe you're a lone duck out in rural Oklahoma, but just know that you have a friend in our organization and people that are here to support and advocate for you. Eric, did you have anything else any other questions?
No, the only thing is I saw, thank you, Heather. I know that she, just make sure you all see that they have an attendance form for today's conference. And so I believe it's just kind of like a little bit of a check-in. Since there's not the normal check-in whenever we're together and more, I'm sure they would like to hear just kind of like, rate, your session, things that went well, things that didn't go well, what we can fix and do better. So just if you have time to do that.
That will also give you a professional development certificate as well.
Okay, awesome. And then Heather, just you'll have this on the website, this recorded version of it for people to go back to down the road. Awesome.
And I guess I'll just close by saying thank you to the Oklahoma Council for the Social Studies. We appreciate the opportunity to get to attend your conference, and all the participants, you're here virtually this year. Hopefully the next time that OCSS has a conference, we can be in person, but their conference is dynamic and it's a great place for you not only to attend sessions, but to collaborate with social studies educators from all across Oklahoma. And so I encourage everyone to continue to support our state organizations, especially during these times. OCSS has a website that has fantastic resources to help you guys out for any lessons that you need. And I know they continue to update that monthly or daily. And so they're a great resource as well. So again, thank you. And I hope everybody continues to enjoy OCSS and joins OCSS in the final session, which will take place next Tuesday at 4:30.
Thank you guys for presenting, and I'm so glad that we have our partnership.
Thank you, Heather.